Hello and welcome to In the Interim. I'm Interim Dean of the University of Michigan College of Pharmacy, Bruce Mueller, and In the Interim is a program that we've put together so that our College of Pharmacy community can meet with VIPs from around the country, even if we're all sitting in our own bedrooms and living rooms. And today's VIP is one of my favorite people of all time that's come through the College of Pharmacy, and it's Dr. Audrey Nakamura, who graduated from our PharmD program. And in fact, we'll talk about this, I'm sure, but she was my first PharmD investigation student, but I didn't even know what it was. So I'll have to find out whatever happened with that project. But she did residencies at the University of California, San Francisco, and currently works at the UCLA Ronald Reagan Medical Center, where she serves as pharmacy manager of surgical services. And so it's my great pleasure to introduce to you one of my favorite people, Audrey Nakamura. So welcome to In the Interim, Audrey.
Thank you, Dean Mueller.
Oh, Dean Mueller. You don't have to call me Dean Mueller. So one of the things that I want to share, we're already getting some Go Bruins in the chat room already, so that's pretty darn cool, which is awesome. Really, the purpose for all of this, Audrey, is that we do this and we want our students and staff and faculty to be able to ask you questions. And so I invite them all to do that by chat, or they can use the Q&A feature. Or at the end, I'll open up the microphones to anybody who would like to ask a question live. So whatever works for the audience, that's what we're going to do. But our first question is always a scripted question. I got to ask, what is that background?
So the tiger is real. We went to Cambodia and we decided to go stop over in Thailand as well. And when I was looking up things to do in Thailand, there was this thing called Tiger Kingdom. And I've loved tigers my entire life since I can remember, since I was born in the year of the tiger. And because they're strong, they're independent, you know, and they can survive on their own. They're the most beautiful creatures that walk the face of this earth. So when I had the opportunity to go and pet one, of course I could not pass that by. And so I learned a lot, actually. I learned that never show your back towards a tiger, because that's when they attack you.
I'll keep that in mind if I run into one.
Is if you're in back, and even when you watch them play fight, you'll watch that they'll wait till their opponent turns their back on them, and then they pounce. Second thing I learned was how to pet a tiger. So when you go and pet a tiger, you don't pet the face and you don't pet the front paws, but you can touch anything else. You can play with their tail, you can touch their back, you can touch their belly, you can even press their paws so that their claws come out. You just have to press it firm, because if you're light touch, then they think it's like a fly or an insect and they'll shake, like they shake it off.
Well, we got a public service announcement here on how to pet a tiger, and I'm really hopeful with this knowledge that nobody in the audience will be eaten by a tiger now. So I think you've really done a lot of good today already, even if we stop right now. That's pretty great.
Yeah.
Well, you are one of these crazy people who actually left Hawaii to move to Michigan. And what kind of person does that? Can you fill me in?
Okay, well, it wasn't a straight jump from Maui to Michigan, but yeah, I was born and raised in the beautiful island of Maui. And after I graduated, I wanted to go to college somewhere in the contiguous United States, since my brothers have already went there. So one of them went to Colorado, the other one went to California, and I kind of wanted my own state, so I went to Washington.
It's your own state.
Yeah. And I graduated chemistry and biochem. And at that time, I was thinking about doing some not pharmaceutical, but just research, plain research. And so there I did undergraduate research in inorganic chemistry, which is not something I could see myself doing for the rest of my life. So after I graduated, I came down to California. Actually ended up living with my brother at UCLA, and I worked in the biological chemistry department and did research using my other degree in biochemistry. After 2 years of that, though, I realized that I wanted to do research that would have an impact within my lifetime. And the research that I was doing was purely academic. In other words, it was with yeast and transport systems, and it really wasn't going to have an impact during my lifetime. So I decided, well, I had a friend who went to pharmacy school, and she said, why don't I consider pharmaceutical research? And so I looked into that. I applied to 3 schools. I think it was Michigan,
The
UCLA,
rest don't matter. There's really only one school that matters.
right. And everybody thought I was crazy because I got into all of them, but they thought I was crazy because I chose Michigan. But there were several reasons why I picked Michigan. One, it was a small college of pharmacy at a big university. And so at that time, there was only about 50 applicants, and 50 people in my class. I don't know what the
Right.
size is
The
right
classes were smaller. It was about 50 then.
now. Right. And our student to faculty ratio was pretty much 1-to-1 or 1-to-2, and you really got to know the faculty at that time. And another reason was because at that time, Michigan was only one of the few programs that still had a research project that you had to do. And remember, my mindset was to do research. And I actually ended up doing research with you on trace elements and CRT, which we don't have to go over that anymore. But
Did we publish that? We might have
but
published that.
but if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have gotten 2 publications out of that. And you even put me as first author, which was an honor and a privilege. Like, who names me as a first author? I mean, thank you so much.
You did the work. But so the questions are already coming in, and one of them is, is there like we have a lot of students who are pharmacy students now, and we have some students who are in our bachelor's program, which is something we didn't really have really enforced when you were here. So there's people who are thinking about pharmacy school as a pharmacist, thinking about research, some pre-med students. Was there some turning point for you? Like, how did you know that, this kind of research or this kind of career, like everyone's looking for this magic number. We ask this question every week to our guests.
Well, actually, when I came to U of M with my mindset of research, when I started taking the classes, I didn't realize this whole world of clinical pharmacy practice. And so it totally changed my direction. So you never know exactly where you're going to end up. One of the quotes that stuck with me throughout my life was something my dad told me, or told my mom when they were traveling, is you do not take the journey takes you. And that's what makes life interesting and fun. And so it's not like I believe in fate, right? What I do believe is that throughout your life, you are presented with opportunities and choices, and you're given a choice and where you have to decide. And it's when you make that decision that it determines sort of like where your path is headed. Now, once you make that choice, though, the result or the outcome or the consequences are beyond your control, right? So in that case, it's kind of like fate, but they say if you pick up one end of the stick, the other end follows. Now,
You're pretty deep tonight. I don't know. But but thinking about that, the research idea. I mean, your project was, if I remember, we did it in our lab, right? And so this was a problem that I had seen seeing patients. This is CRT. So for the students who don't know, this is for patients with kidney disease. At that time a relatively new kind of dialysis treatment, and we didn't know if we were removing with this treatment all the trace elements in patients. And so we decided we made up our own blood and dialysis in the laboratory.
Yeah, bovine.
And then you got to learn how to do that. And we started dialyzing and tried to analyze if, in fact, we could predict what was going to happen to patients. So you kind of did clinical research, although we didn't do it in a clinical setting. We took it back into the laboratory. So you were the original translational researcher at the time. Think about it. And then we actually went back after you and looked at patients to see if it replicated what you found. And in fact, it did. And so
that's a lot of work too.
Well, but there's other PharmD investigation students, and that's the basis for how we use nutrition, or how we look at trace elements in patients getting these therapies. So, like, you were there on the front end of it. But you say the journey takes you. Can you imagine a path in your life when you would have been a pharmaceutical researcher instead? I mean, you're kind of far afield, and we'll talk in a minute what you're doing now.
Right, because you never know where you're going to end up. And, like I said, you make choices, you make a decision, you get set on a certain path, and then the outcome occurs, and then you have to just, you have another choice. You can either be happy with that decision or you can be sad with it. Like for me, I don't really have any regrets because I've always explored all of my options and I've been happy with the choices that I've made.
But I would say that it's not like the wind blew and you were just like this Forrest Gump
No,
feather that went and went. Like you made decisions. I mean, so you got to
exactly.
be, you are where you are for a reason. But when we've talked specifically earlier, one of the things that sort of made me smile is that you did this residency program. So to be a clinical pharmacist, whatever. And did
Right.
you do it in surgery?
No.
Because I see you're
Well,
the
right.
working in the
So
surgical area.
you're absolutely right. So after I was done with Michigan, I decided to go to UCSF just to see what I missed, as had I.
Nothing. You went to Michigan. You didn't
Yeah,
miss a thing.
exactly. Like I said, no regrets. But I sort of picked that institution because it had a lot of teaching opportunities because they had a much bigger class size. And over there, they really utilized their residents to do the teaching aspect. So you're also still working primarily with your preceptors, and then you're teaching the students from there on. But what I was going to say is the areas speed up. I also went to Cedars-Sinai to do an admin residency. I wasn't sure if I wanted to go into administration either. At that time, I was deciding between geriatrics, since I love old people, and or administration. And both of my parents, they're kind of administrators in their own way. My dad ran his own business, and my mom went to the very top in terms of the university setting. And so they had two very different management styles. Like if you ever read the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad, one works for the government and one works for their own personal business. It's a very different kind of administrative.
You had rich dad, poor mom. Is that what you're saying?
I had a rich dad, poor mom.
You have to read the book to understand that joke. Sorry, everybody. So,
but,
but you
but then
never like.
I became I became an administrator, and the area in which I practice, the areas in which I oversee are all areas in which I never really took a rotation in. For instance, I'm in charge of neurosurgery, liver transplant, kidney transplant, hematology, oncology. I never took any rotations in those fields. And so I'm just saying, you never know where you're going to end up. Had I known I was going to be in those areas, maybe I would have taken a rotation in that area. But it was good for me because it forced me to teach myself. And that's what University of Michigan was really good about doing. I remember my first day at U of M. I don't remember who gave that speech to me, but they basically said, everything we teach you today might become obsolete in 10 to 15 years from now. So we're not going to teach you necessarily the drugs, et cetera, but we're going to give you the skills that you need in order to continually learn and use this knowledge in order to apply it someday.
I'm getting lots of questions. Research can be a lot of different things. But when you think about it, to me, research just means solving a problem, right? You gather data, maybe you try to make a change, you gather more data, right? And you try to come to a solution. That's research. Can you talk about how the research process works, which is identify a problem, get some facts, try to come up with a solution and go, and how that relates to, to being a supervisor over all these different areas at UCLA?
Well, I think research, when I was in undergrad and after I graduated and doing research for you, it just taught me how to critically think. Because, like I said, you're doing experiments, and whatever the result is, right? You have to interpret what the result is. You can't make up the result. Like, it is what it is. And now that you're faced with a whole new set of facts, you have to think in a different way or try and explain why it became that way. So I think it's important as a researcher but I don't really do that much research right now. I have been involved with some of the residency projects that they've done, like for instance, measuring busulfan levels. I'm doing a collaborative with CAR T cells with the UC system. But it's always collaborative. It's not just me doing the research. It's with other people who are also interested in that field.
Well, questions are rolling in here. So you've got this, you seem like superwoman here. You got this great job. You're leading all these folks. When you were a pharmacy, in pharmacy school, you kind of talked about how Michigan sort of got you ready, and some of it was your research and other things.
Yeah.
Can you talk about what you did, maybe extracurricular, or how you did networking, or like what were some of the important things that you did that built skills for you?
Well, the good thing about Michigan is it got me to do a lot of extracurricular activities. So that was my first jumping point, where I was involved in organizations.
Like what?
Oh, I'm just gonna have to jog my memory here.
Oh, I got to pull your resume out.
Yes.
But like you're talking about pharmacy student organizations.
As a student, yeah, I
Okay.
did a lot of, let's see.
Don't worry about it. Doesn't matter which one.
I was Operation Diabetes Coordinator. I was the president of ROCI. I was the Student Government Council P4 class representative, treasurer of APHA. Do you guys still have AP?
We have all those things. We have a lot of future Audreys here as it is.
Right, and just getting your feet wet in terms of like how to organize an Operation Diabetes, etc., working with your peers really helps out a lot. But I did continue when I was at Cedars-Sinai doing my admin residency. Rita Shane was really known in ASHP, and so she got me involved in that whole process. And so I started off as being an MPA for the programming committee. So what the programming committee did is they find a topic that the section is interested in, and you find a speaker in that expertise, and then you have them speak at mid-year. So that was also a good networking thing, because you get to find the experts, talk to them, ask for their slides, etc. And from there, they asked me if I wanted to do the management pearls. And for those of you who's been to ASHP, the Pearl section is really useful because they're just 5-minute lectures of something that they leave you with.
And there's hundreds of people. It's the biggest audience I've ever spoken to when I've done those.
Exactly.
That's
And it really has impact.
There's like thousands there.
Yeah. And they like little short bits of pearls that they can take away from the meeting. And so by just doing the coordination of the management pearl section, I got to talk to like leaders and directors from all over the country, just to see if they wanted to give a topic discussion in that pearl section.
So you kind of like these, it sounds like these opportunities are coming and all you're doing is saying yes.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
eventually, I mean, but like like your path is a little weird. So you do this admin residency, you do the admin residency, you're still kind of a very young person. And then did you get hired to be a supervisor right away? Oh no, did we lose Audrey? That's terrible if we lost Audrey. This has never happened before in the interim. But I can tell you, what's interesting is we talked in the pre-prep, and hopefully she gets back, and Amy, if you can work on getting her back, is that she's rounded on all these different services, but every time she got a new service, which she never did a rotation and had no background, she had to learn it all herself, and now precepts all these different rotations, which is kind of crazy. So I'm hoping that we can get her back. And Amy, if you can give me a little type bill here of what's going on. Are there any other questions you'd like me to hit? Maybe somebody bring those back to me. We're going to try to get her back. If there's any other questions you'd like me to ask, so please put them into the chat. That's working really well as we're calling her to try to get her back. So I would say, but knowing Audrey, is she wasn't a big researcher. I mean, the projects we did were really, I think, her final published research projects that happened. And after that, she worked to apply those skills into, in this case, being an administrator. And I have to tell you, when she was a student, this wasn't the path that I thought she was going to take. It's working for her. She's doing great. When she comes back, I want to hit questions about work-life balance with her. I want that Rachel Chu's asked this awesome question about, you're a young, I was just about to ask her, you're a young person, how can you be my supervisor? And how does that work? Because Audrey, she graduated 20 years ago. She looks the same as she did when she was a student here. And so I'm interested in hearing what her answer to that is as well. And then work-life balance. Let's see, what else did I see on here? So those are the big questions that I've got so far. So we'll see how that goes. Well, I'm gonna, just because I'm filling time here. The other thing I want to say is the next, I'm gonna show this here. Let's see, she lost her internet. Oh my gosh, she's calling. She's going to try to call back on. I'm going to share a screen and we'll do this. Usually I do this at the end of the show, but I'll do it now. The next program is going to be November 18th on a Wednesday. And what's going to be interesting about it, it isn't going to be led by me. Dean Vicki Ellingrod said she wanted to do one of these. Why should I get all the fun? And as a result, this program is going to be led by Dean Ellingrod. It's going to be a way different kind of topic. It's going to be very interesting, probably the most important program we've done all year, and I really wanted her to run it. So if you mark your busy social calendars, it'll be back to 5:30, and it'll be on a Wednesday, November 18th. And then that's going to be the last week that the students officially are on campus. And as a result, I think I'm going to stop the interims unless students tell me they really, really want them. But I have a feeling you're really working on getting ready for finals and all that kind of stuff. And so I think I'm going to lay off of it and then start the interim, if you value them, the interims again after January, and see if that will work. So I'm hoping that that's the way that's going to go. So that's next week. Amy, you may have to let her into from a waiting room if she's trying to call back in, or if we can get her verbally. I don't need to look at the tiger anymore. We'll see how that goes. Hopefully that works. Otherwise, I have her cell phone, but I didn't really want to do it that way. I could do it that way, I guess. Sorry about the first technical difficulty we've had all year. Finally, when I get a person I got a million questions for. Let's see if this is going to work. Well, we'll see if she can call in. Otherwise, I might put her on my speakerphone or something like that, and that could be something we can try too. Oh, look at who's back. In her closet, it looks like. Oh, there she is. What in the world?
I'm so sorry. I don't know why my computer...
I want to say that a tiger attacked you from the back and unplugged your computer is my guess. All right, let's get back on.
I'm actually on my iPad now.
iPad, all right, well, there you go. Well, you're in California, you have to use the iPad. All right, so here we go. So I was building to a couple different questions that people are asking me. One of them is, you came out of your administrative residency, you were still a relatively young person.
I was, yes.
And then how could you go out and then be the boss and the supervisor? And how does that work as a young woman who comes in and all of a sudden you're the big shot?
And it doesn't help that you look young either.
Yeah, you look the same as you did when you were here when you graduated.
It's the Asian gene. Okay. Yeah, you're right. I would go to meetings and people would be like, "Oh, did you just graduate from pharmacy school?" I was like, "No, I've been out for a while."
Actually, for the audience, your classmates, two of our faculty are your classmates.
Oh,
so today
really?
I learned that Trisha Wells.
Oh yeah,
Trisha Ormsby and Hannah Fan we just hired. Hannah Fan
gosh.
is back.
Oh,
yeah, everyone comes back to Michigan. We're waiting for you, Audrey. So that's so these were Audrey's classmates who are on our faculty. So,
right.
all right. So what was the solution? Baby face. You go in there. You look like a young person. What were some skills, or what did you do, or what works?
Well, for me, it's because I look so young. It was more of I had to earn people's respect. A lot of people just give respect, or certain people who just exude respect. But for me, I had to earn it. And so one of the things what I am right now is I'm a working supervisor. So what a working supervisor does is they staff 40 hours a week. So I can do everything that my pharmacists do on a daily basis. But in addition to that, I also have administrative responsibilities, teaching responsibilities, research responsibilities, etc. But what staffing does for me is
when staffing, what do you mean by staffing when you say staffing? Yeah.
Well, for us, it's an integrated system. So your clinical pharmacists are your operational pharmacists. We are the pharmacists who are dispensing as well as doing all the clinical protocols. And I have a couple pharmacists who actually go on rounds for the liver ICU, the neurosurgery, as well as the hematology oncology services. But we all know what to do to dispense medications. And believe it or not, dispensing medications, that's helpful when you go to rounds because you know what the drug comes as, what the dose is, you know.
That's
And
right.
just knowing those basic fundamental things makes your job a lot easier when they ask you questions right off the bat. But like I said, the fact that I staff 40 hours a week, just like my other pharmacists, you earn their respect. When it comes to implementing a new procedure or a new policy has to be formed, you can give them feedback like, this is feasible, this is not feasible, why don't we try it this way? Because you know how the workflow really is on your satellites. So I think regardless of how you look or how I might act sometimes, being a little younger than I really am, yeah, you learn to function operationally and earn the respect of the people who you work for.
So you said 40 hours, but it sounds to me you're not a 40-hour-a-week kid.
I
And
am not.
I know. So tell me about, everyone wants to talk about work-life balance. I don't want to call it that. I want to call it work-life integration. How do you make it work? How can you got I'm looking at our folks in the audience, mostly women, and who are looking at you as a career model. How do you make it work in your life?
Well, I think balance is really important because you have to have different areas of your life, your friends, your family, your work, because none of those areas in your life are always going to be like on track, happy-go-lucky thing. And so if one area of your life goes sour, then at least you have the other areas of your life that are still going good.
Wow. So it's
Everything
diversification.
into
You're doing the personal
perspective.
finance course here.
Yeah, it puts everything into perspective, right? And it's not going to stay bad for the rest of the time. I mean, eventually it's going to get better. And so that's why it's very important to have a balanced lifestyle, because it's important to put things into perspective all the time.
We got some P3s and P4s. They're asking me all kinds of questions who are interested in your career path. They're saying things. Questions are something. So start off with, how did you know which residencies to apply for? Because we're in that part of we're in that part of the process.
Oh,
And then,
wow.
and so if we can do that one, and then also it related, okay, if I want to be an administrator, maybe I want to check into that. Should I do PGY1, PGY2, then admin? Should I do a admin residency right off the bat? Like, what's the path, would you recommend?
Okay, sure. So I definitely recommend doing a PGY1 regardless. Most people do a PGY1 before they do a PGY2 or an admin, etc. I applied to only 4 programs, I think: UCSF,
It's a little different
UCSD.
nowadays, I'm telling you.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I heard. Someone wanted a letter of recommendation. I'm like, you're applying to 10 places? What? But yeah, I hear it's really competitive. But again, I wanted to see what I had missed out, and so I decided to go to UCSF. And UCSF and University of Michigan, they're kind of like a bubble in the sense where it's a university hospital and you have a University of College of Pharmacy. And not all places are like that. See, when you have a College of Pharmacy to support the university hospital, you can call on the faculty to help with the precepting and doing the research, etc. Whereas UCLA, we don't have a College of Pharmacy. So it's not in that same sort of bubble. The people who are precepting the rotations are the people who are doing the clinical, all the integrated pharmacists on the floors. So in one way, it's a good thing because you really get real life experiences when you're working, going through your rotations, but you don't have the luxury of having like a total expert in that field who does
It's
research in
great that
that
we have an expert in
area.
about everything here, right?
Exactly.
So I need
Yeah.
to talk about from a job perspective, California. We have a number of students who want to get out there. What's the job market like? What's the interview process? Especially now, what's the interview process going to be like? Any tips you've got? Now's the time for the tips because we're coming to the end of the evening here.
Oh, okay.
California
Well,
market?
California, everybody wants to move to California, and fortunately or unfortunately, you do have to take the California board's law section, which has clinical questions on it, because California finally decided to go with the NAPLEX. I think I was the last person to take the old California board exam, to be honest. There was a little controversy this past year about people cheating on that exam, and unfortunately that delayed the licensing of a lot of our residents because they all had to retake the exam. Fortunately, they all passed the first time and they all passed the second time, so there is no further delay in them
Yeah,
practicing
that
as
was
a
hard.
resident.
But what the market,
Yeah.
it's the job market in SoCal is what?
uh it depends. It was a good economy at that time, before COVID hit. So we were able to hire a lot of pharmacists. But since COVID hit, we had to shut down our hospital. We lost a lot of money because all of the elective surgeries, which is what really brings in the cash for the hospital, were all canceled.
Same
And
here,
so
though.
we
I think
lost
that's the
a
same
lot of
everywhere.
money.
But what about
Yeah.
now? What about now?
Now, we still have a hiring freeze, but we do have some positions that we are able to continue to stay open. And they're all on this website. If you just Google UCLA, I think I sent someone the link, and you
We'll
look
get it out.
for
Yeah.
pharmacy, there's a list of positions that you have. And, you know, honestly, every year it's a little different. Sometimes just because someone retires in the pediatric field, we need a pediatric pharmacist. Oncology was a really hard area to find. I guess there's not many people who are encouraged to go into the field of oncology, and that's one of the areas that I supervise. But so it really depends on supply and demand,
We have
and
lots of good
you
ones in
never know.
Michigan. We have lots of good oncology people from Michigan, I'm
Oh,
just going
well,
to
that's
say.
good
So
if
I
they're
think it's
willing
a
to.
strength of our program. So, all right. Well, but you know, those are people that are PGY2s. You're probably not looking at anybody with less experience than a PGY2 in oncology or pediatrics or whatever.
Right. For those high specialty areas, we do prefer someone who does a PGY2 in that area. But if you just want to be a generalist, like we have some float pharmacists, you don't have to do a PGY2, but they do expect a PGY1 at the very least.
Okay, it's
Yeah.
good to know. All right, and I don't want to keep going long, but this is your chance. What kind of words of wisdom would you give to the dozens of students that we've got online here?
I think it's important to, like, when you go through the interview process, because a lot of things are virtual right now, the key to doing any interview, in fact, like this interview that I have with Dean Mueller, is that you really just need to really know yourself, because that's what the interview is, to get to know the person on the other side. And if you really know yourself, then an interview should be a piece of cake. And that's pretty much
You've
it.
gotten so philosophical. You know yourself. This is it. The journey takes you. I'm hearing. I'm learning all kinds of stuff about you. All right. Well, Audrey, I'm going to share your contact information. Can people reach out to you if they've got questions about things or some
Sure.
sort of
Yeah.
networking or on a LinkedIn connection or something along those lines if they've got specific
Uh,
questions?
Email would be the best way. I think
Okay.
my LinkedIn is pretty outdated. I haven't gone in LinkedIn in a
Okay.
while.
All right. Well, I won't hold you to it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that sounds really good. Are there anybody who's here live would want to say anything or ask a question live before we close? I tried to hit as many as I could, but honestly, I got zillions of questions in. You win the record for the most questions being asked, I have to say.
I'm happy to entertain any questions. And I know that you guys might be shy, but please speak up, because I mean, the whole purpose of these conference calls or Zoom calls is to, like, get to meet somebody. So if you guys want to actually show yourself so I can see you and remember you, I'm more of a visual person anyway.
I don't know if they can in whatever format we're in right now,
You
but
can't see
anyway.
them? Oh,
All
okay.
right.
All
Well,
right, that's okay. Never
but
mind.
I know, we've got, a lot of students that come from California or want to move out there, and, it's November. I have to tell you, Audrey, it was 70 degrees today. It was a beautiful day. And it can be that way in November, but it can also not be that way. So, but it was great now. All right, I'm gonna say thank you and goodbye to Audrey. Audrey, it was fabulous to see you again. I'm sorry we don't get together in person, but
Yeah, and I'm sorry it's so late at night, but I
I
appreciate
know
your
it's way past my
flexibility.
bedtime.
I know. Did you get to eat dinner?
I did have dinner already. That's just, because I got to get tucked in. All right, Dr. Nakamura, great talking with
All
you.
right.
I
Take
have
care.
the connection information for Audrey right here. And again, reminding the rest of our audience, Wednesday, November 18th, 5:30, hosted by Dean Vicky Ellingrad. We'll finally have a good host for this program, so that'll be mighty exciting. Thank you, Dr. Nakamura, and thanks
All
to the
right.
audience. Have a great night, everybody.